Thanks for your indulgence. I'm sorry for taking so long to get this underway. I'm really happy to be here. I'm really happy to be talking to you guys. I've heard nothing but good things about your community. This particular group of the Lair that people that, according to Frank and Patrick here, have the greatest likelihood of actually getting any value out of anything that they're being, that I've got to tell them. And I'll be frank for a moment. I'll be as direct as I can and say that what I really get out of doing these seminars and sharing the stuff that I'm trying to share might be a little non-obvious, because I'm generally not charging for it, and I'm putting everything I can into making sure that everything's shared online. I'm trying to write things up and share stuff because I really and truly believe that the best thing that I can do for the world in which I live is share a lot of these insights with the kind of people who are most in a position to get value out of them, who've already been exposed to a whole lot of things that perpetuate some really negative cultural bias. I'm not talking about any particular religious bias or ethnicity or anything like that. I'm talking about a bias that tends to make men believe that there's a battle of the sexes between men and women, and tends to have women believe there's a battle of the sexes between women and men. I tell you guys, there isn't. There isn't a chasm in between the guys who want to be with the women and the women who want different things. It's not about that at all. It's a framing problem. The frame in which almost everyone has been raised around the world is a frame in which women have been taught for many, many, many generations that their only value is to demonstrate to the world that they can command a high price from a quality man to be their contracted long-term whore. The whole model begins with that a woman is taught to believe her only value comes from how much she can get from an appropriate man to buy her. If you tell this to women, they'll just throw things at you. They won't believe you could dare say this to them. But if you frame it properly and explain it to them, by the time you've explained it, they'll know I'm not making it up. This is something everyone knows. They've just never put the frame around it. And so I'll give you a very quick rundown on what I call the seductive reasoning paradigm. You start out, doesn't matter how you get into this conversation. Whatever you've used as an opener, whatever you've used to find yourself in an interesting conversation with a woman. It could be as simple as you've talked for all of about 20 seconds and she's wondering why it is you're wasting her time. Okay, so you grab a hold of the reins of the conversation and you careen it off in the direction you want. You say, it's funny. Human beings are pretty much unique in that we can have as much sex as we want, as often as we want. Our females can become aroused, opt to consummate whenever they want, and it sure is a bizarre thing that they generally don't. It's not that they're worried about becoming pregnant. We've got wonderful medicines and techniques to prevent that. But somehow, women don't have all the sex they want. And it's not even a question of whether they found the right partner. Because even if they found the right partner, they're almost never having all the sex they want. It's really curious. Because women go through their lives following from a few basic rules that they've never taken the time to think through. They don't understand where they come from. Amongst little one another. When a man says what's on his mind about something that's non-ideal, except amongst his very, very closest friends, he knows he's going to be savaged. This is a whole lot of no fun. Men don't enjoy this. And so they keep to themselves. They suffer pretty terrible relationships for a long time. And not just relationships, it can happen in anything. Because men don't like to open up to other men and say they've got a problem. Now, we come back to this first category of people, these sluts. We say, well, gee, every guy likes sluts because they like that they're open and playful and able to have sex with them. But they know that if they show up at some place with a girl who's a known slut, their buddies are going, what are you doing with Sally Carruthers? Everyone knows she's a slut. Well, yeah, well, I'm just having fun with her. Because if they said, you know what, I really like Sally. She's bright and fun to be with. He knows all his buddies will stop having approval of him. And his fear of losing their approval is enough to make him walk away from something he's happy with. So now, we take aside all these sluts. We say, okay, well, we know the slut is defined as having no self-respect because she gives it away for nothing. Therefore, the girl who has respect is the girl who charges for it. Now we have a term for a girl who charges for it too. And you can ask the girl you're talking to about that. You can say, what do you call a woman who charges money for sex? And she'll tell you, a whore, prostitute, whatever. That works. Interesting thing though, there are two categories of that role. There's a low status prostitute. Can you hear me in the back? The low status prostitute, who we'll call a hoe, because it's easy to remember and sounds good. And a hoe is a girl who basically says to herself or to her buddies, because women will understand if a woman is doing something that they may feel is compromising, as long as they can understand she's doing it for security. No one gave Anna Nicole Smith a hard time for marrying a billionaire who was 70 years older than she was or whatever. Because every woman knows, oh, well, because she's going for the security aspect. I can understand that. Men will choose approval over security. Women will choose security over approval. And so, there are many men, you'll see this all the time, guys who stay with something which sucks because other people will say, oh, well, at least they're doing the right thing. But if in order to do the right thing for themselves, they have to do something that other people would shake their head at, the men won't do it. And personally, I look at this as self-sabotage. We'll get back to that. So now we come back to the original seductive reasoning paradigm. On one side, we've got the women who do things for their own reasons because they want to, because it makes them happy, feel alive and actualized, and they have managed to free themselves from an overwhelming compulsion for security in favor of doing things that give them happiness. And we call them women who have no self-respect, give themselves away for nothing. We call them sluts. On the other side, we have, on the low status side, women who say, well, he took me to see Cats, paid $200 for the tickets, he took me for a nice dinner and some drinks afterwards, so I'll go to bed with him. Or, he's taken me out 3 times already and I haven't given him anything, so I guess I'll go to bed with him. Or he promised to take me away to Aspen skiing, or he's taken care of my rent last month, or he did my taxes for me, or he's a really sweet guy and he does lots of good things for me, and I know that other people will presume that he's going to make an honest woman out of me. My parents won't complain too much. For whatever reason, she feels she's getting value from this guy. So as long as she's prepared to put out, she knows she'll get in. Okay? And we call this itinerant whore, this on-demand whore, we call her a hoe. Okay? And maybe it's as simple as, hey buddy, $300, I'll suck your dick. Whatever the deal is. It's a simple cause and effect transaction. Then we have a high status one. This is the really psychotic part of our society, guys. It's really twisted shit. A high status whore doesn't even have to have sex once she's made her deal. We call her a contract whore. The way it works for her is she's able to demonstrate to a guy she's so high profile, such high demand, that she's prepared to forswear everyone in favor of only having sex with her one client for the rest of her life in exchange for a lifetime of economic support for herself and her kids. We have another nasty 4-letter word for that kind of girl. We call her a wife. Now, You have a conversation with any woman or any man about exactly this subject, and you use the same paradigm I'm describing to you, which is in fact a defensible, real one. The paradigm works very simply. If a woman does the things that she wants to for her own reasons, we give her a hard time about it. We give everyone who would choose to go around with her a hard time about it. We make her feel guilty to herself for doing these things. But we're okay with a woman who says, well, I'm going to ignore some of the social rules about not sleeping with someone before marriage or whatever else, because what I'm getting out of it is of high enough value to me. I can justify to myself lowering my long-term economic value, the economic value I would presumably have if I were to keep myself in previously chaste moral character and wait for Mr. Right to come along and marry me, well, buy me, same thing, sign my contract, make an honest woman out of me. So I can forswear that a little bit because I'm getting this good income that I need, because society's changed, fellas. I mean, people no longer get married at 15 before they have to finish school. They have to enter the real world, and that may be quite a while before they find someone who's prepared to pony up and sign that contract. So the girls have to either live without for a very long time under some perceived notion of value to chastity, or they'll have their relationships for as long as they last. And they're going to just make sure that in their minds they haven't done anything wrong, so they don't have to punish themselves for being sluts. How does a woman who's doing this, how does a woman who is living with herself comfortably in hoe status, she has not yet signed a contract vending her right to share her sexuality with others for her lifetime, the way a wife has, but yet she is prepared to share her sexuality with others as long as it's a very limited pool of others. Only thing is, it doesn't always work out that way, because girls get horny and they love sex. They love it as much as we do. And so what'll happen from time to time is a girl will meet some guy, and it just so happens, for whatever reason, she thinks he's cute, funny, smart, he said the right things at the right time, and she's going to go to bed with him. This happens all the time. Women's standards change during the course of their menstrual cycle. Every month they ovulate, and when they're ovulating, their body changes its hormone patterns and certain things change. It's not the standards of quality they want, but rather what they're looking for this week, the week of their ovulation, is someone who turns them on in an unconscious sexual way, suggesting to them this guy's seed is going to generate a healthy, strong baby. I can't actually think this through in my mind, but my brain knows it. This alpha personality, this different from me sort, does it for me, and I'm going to go to bed with him. Only, wait a second, I can't tell my friends about this. I can't even really admit it to anybody. So I'm going to find a way, after the fact, to say, well, I didn't find out his last name, so you know what, that didn't count. Or, well, actually we didn't actually make it back to his place, we just had sex in his car, so it doesn't count. Or for whatever other reason in the world, the woman will decide, through logical equivocation, that it doesn't count. I'm writing an autobiography, as I said in the video. I'm kind of fictionalizing a little bit so I don't get killed by anyone's husband. Called The Man Who Didn't Count, because that's been my role for many years, for many, many, many women. Because an awful lot of women, even when they have been logically emancipated by the description I've just given you, the idea that for whatever reason they've decided to accept that their roles have to be either a slut, which is a woman who does what she wants and therefore is branded as having no self-respect. And guys, take a second with me here, okay? If you do what you want to do, you have no self-respect. Can you process that? I'm having a lot of trouble with it myself. I'm trying for years. But somehow women are fed this as the nature of reason. If you ever wonder why it is women seem so crazy, why women betray each other all the time and expect to be forgiven for it by their friends, why eventually women get screwed over by their friends so much they say, screw it, I'm not even going to have any more female friends. They start spending time with us. It's because women get taught yes is no, true is false. If I do what I want to do, I have no self-respect. This absurd logic makes it impossible for anything to really make sense. They know they're going to do things. They know they're going to betray their closest friends. They know they're going to give in to their hormones, as though they've been heavily drugged, but they've never been taught. By the way, ladies, you're going to have this situation where you're going to change your standards. You're no longer going to be looking for a provider, someone who's going to be supportive and appreciative and appropriate. For a few days each month, you're going to be looking for someone who's going to give you the right seed so you can generate a strong, healthy baby with a good chance of survival. And so these girls will screw each other's boyfriends, screw their best friend's brother, screw their best friend's sister's boyfriend. They'll do all sorts of things that no one can believe they do. If guys sleep with their best friend's ex without clearing it up with him first, they can expect to be completely ostracized by he and all of their shared friends for being a shitheel. All he has to do is go to his best friend first and say, is it okay? And his best friend will be practically compelled by society to say, well, sure, give it a try. You know, I split up with her, or we're not together. But if a guy undercuts his friend's territory in that way, it is an unforgivable act for many, many years. Women don't have this. They have a month of not talking to each other, maybe. You've probably all witnessed it. It's because women have grown up with this. They recognize it. They know they don't even tell themselves the truth about their situations. You talk to any group of girls. If you have girls who are close friends, and you ever listen to one of them whining to you about how it's been 5 months, they broke up with Steven 5 months ago, they haven't had any sex in all that time. You say, what about that guy you went home with from that club that time? You don't have to say anything more than that. That's plenty. What about that guy you went home with from that place that time? And almost invariably you go, oh, that didn't count. It took 2 minutes, it didn't count. Right? He gave me a phony number, it didn't count. Why didn't it count? It wasn't because it wouldn't have counted to you had you been her husband, her contractor. To you it would really count. Right? But to her it didn't count because she needed it not to count. Because society has taught her. There's a number that you have to keep track of in your mind of how many lovers you've had, after which you're tainted. No one will ever want you. You're dirty. You've had too many previous owners. Okay? Now, myself, I look at a pretty woman and I think, wow, pretty girl. I sure hope she's had a lot of good sex with a lot of people. Because if she has, she's going to have learned how to use those muscles of hers that make sex really good for me. Okay? I'm going to hope that she's figured it out and she feels emancipated in herself. She recognizes for herself that sex is a fun, happy thing. And she doesn't have to posture that it's an inaccessible thing unless I'm prepared to pony up, unless I'm prepared to offer to buy her by putting a ring on her finger and giving her my last name. She's not going to let me have any part of that. But women still teach each other that this is the way to do it. Women teach each other, well, you're never going to get anywhere in the world. You're never going to have any value in the world unless you can find a high-quality, desirable man to guarantee your security. Obviously, it's not enough that you have the long-term, valuable appreciation and love of a man who's prepared to contribute to your life in any important way, who's there because he chooses to be there, and you're with him because you choose to be with him. Oh no, it's only enough if you can get him to contract to support you forever, because we all know that infatuation has a limited run life. You meet someone new, they're fantastic, everything about them turns you on, they can do no wrong. That lasts somewhere between an hour and a half and 18 months, sometimes 2 years. And depending on the degree of angst and anxiety in the relationship, like for example, she's got a husband and you're sneaking around behind her back or something, it might stretch out a little longer than that because of the intensity effect, which increases the duration of infatuation. But ultimately, we're all looking at the same thing. If you're counting on being exactly the same way you were with a woman the day you met her, till the day you die, you'd better never have had that artificially bolstered chemical feeling of infatuation. As a matter of fact, I often explain to people when they wonder about this, the reason arranged marriages tend to work, okay, is because the two people who hook up didn't hook up because they were infatuated with one another. They hooked up because they were told to, and they both knew that their role in life was to make it work. And when two people, consider them professionals in this role, the role of having a family, are told to work together, they'll try their best, because they really don't have any choice, to get past otherwise irreconcilable differences. They'll be very accepting of one another because the mission is what matters. As they go on through their life working towards this mission of raising a family, being good parents, etc., they'll grow to love each other, just as we all do with our comrades, male and female. Maybe not sexually love, that's something that we'll reserve for people we feel are appropriate. But when you're working on something with other people and they're working towards the same common goal with love, the camaraderie, the agape, the fraternal love is inevitable. And that's very powerful stuff. And that builds, whether you start your relationship in infatuation mode or in any other longer term mode. And that's the thing that causes the separation anxiety when you separate, because your brain generates wonderful endorphins. That's, by the way, a contraction of endogenic, meaning internally generated, morphines. That's what endorphin comes from. Morphines are painkillers. Heroin is synthetic morphine. Now the objective here is your body wants you to get comfortable with things, because if you'll hang around, probably a whole lot better for everybody. Now, if you go back to my Intro to Seductive Reasoning videos when you have a chance, if you haven't already looked through, I go through an awful lot of evolutionary psychology justification for why these things work for humans and why it's so essential, and why ultimately the reason that it was so important to set up these rules under which women believed that they have to be purchased by a man. And by the way, the rules have only recently started describing that only one woman should be purchased by one man. That's something very new, a couple hundred years. Previously, it was just a case of that a woman's only value was if she could demonstrate to the world that she could find a man who was prepared to buy her. Why was this so important? Because men really like to believe their kids are their own. Now, because we're all players, some of us have almost certainly had some instance where we've discovered that the woman that we were spending time with actually already had an outstanding relationship with some other guy. Maybe a husband, maybe a long-term boyfriend. But they didn't bother to tell us, because it wasn't important to us. We were not going to count. Unless we were so great that they were going to abandon their previous security for what they believed were the newfound security with us. Now, is there anyone here who has any problem with this paradigmatic argument?
Just had a question though. You hear about all these cases in today's society where there's lots of guys that have status, money, etc., can't get laid.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What about the concept of women's families paying a dowry for a husband to take her on?
Sure.
So this is in other cultures.
Sure. Dowries existed usually where there was such a disparity between what the husband would be getting. Right? The husband is very affluent, has lots of land or whatever, or has a lot of prospects, and there's a lot of confidence in him, or perhaps he comes from noble stock, and the wife doesn't come along with much except that she's a woman and will have babies by him. So the family, in an effort to increase their family status, will up the ante. The father of the bride-to-be is wealthy, affluent, established farmer, so he says, I'm going to give you a dowry of 70 acres of prime farmland if you take my daughter off my hand. Guy goes, well, let's see. I'm supposed to have a wife. This one comes along with a lot of good farmland. Okay. Huge tracts of land. But more often than not, because you see, guys, when the men don't have, oh, actually, let's roll this back. We empower women in our society with really only one choice. Their choice is, which man are you going to sell yourself to? That's the choice we give them. We don't give them the choice, are you going to sell yourself to a man? Because if a woman decides that she's never going to have children or never get married, her parents will brutalize her. They will make fun of her. They will cry at her. They will emotionally blackmail her. They'll tell her she's going to grow into be an old maid. She'll be lonely in her old age. She won't have anyone to take care of her. She will have let down everyone. How selfish of her not to have children. Now, as I said in the seminar last, as far as I'm concerned, there's really no more selfish act than having children. It's cloning yourself. When you think enough of yourself, you want to have children. Now, I don't want to have children. I've got a whole bunch of people who think of themselves as my kids, whom I think of as my kids, but having actual biological babies is something I don't want, because I would be a terrible father. Because I'm very attention deficit disordered. And as a, oh look, there's a squirrel. As a consequence of this, paying attention to things because they need attention isn't something I do well. My father was also very ADD, and it didn't occur to him that children needed attention because we need it. Not because we were interesting or because we had anything particularly going on. We just needed attention. My father didn't have a lot of attention to give, so I learned that I could get his attention briefly by really, really doing well. I would get a perfect score on a test. My father would look at my paper and go, "Good." Then I learned something much more valuable. If I misbehaved, he'd pay attention to me for a lot longer. And so I learned to misbehave, and I kept upping the ante on the degree to which I would misbehave. Till I literally killed myself in a car accident, albeit unintentionally, but I was misbehaving pretty well. And when I recovered a few weeks later, got a great scar to show for it. When I recovered a few weeks later, I had to rebuild everything from scratch. Didn't remember who I was or where I was, but I came back. And I had a long time in recovery and convalescence where I realized that there were a whole lot of things that I wanted better to understand before I ever made a mistake like that. Not the mistake of killing myself, the mistake of having children who needed to misbehave in order to feel they got enough attention. So I decided that I was going to wait until I conquered that problem before I had kids. I'm now nearly 40 and I've come to the conclusion that I'm never going to conquer that word. Precisely. Never going to conquest over that problem. So I'm not going to have kids. But I'm very, very comfortable with that at this point. Instead, I mentor people. It gives me a tremendous sense of happiness and pride, especially if I find people who are bright enough to appreciate what I've got to say and courageous enough to ask the questions without any fear at all of my looking at them and going or any of that. Because the truth of the matter is, hey, if you ask a dumb enough question, I'm going to make fun of you, but only for about 2 seconds. I'm not actually going to look down at you for it. I don't mean you guys in particular. You guys are going to make fun of it for real. But on a serious note, I only have one thing I get out of giving these lectures. Did someone get that poltergeist letter? The thing I get out of giving these lectures is the opportunity to open a lot of people's minds up to something very different and hopefully something very useful that they can take with them and propagate to a lot of other people of both genders, and in so doing, increase the general happiness level around them. I'm going to come back to your question from a couple of minutes ago, because I'll tell you how I got into this in the first place. See, I'm a management consultant, and what I generally do is companies call me in to come and have a look at the things that they're doing. Usually I get called in by the chief of R&D or technical operations or things, because as I said before, I'm a geek. And I come in and I vet their project to see for reality checking purposes or sanity checking purposes to make sure that what they're trying to do isn't just gold plating on the part of the chief technical officer, but rather it makes sense. And if I see that it makes sense, I'll tell them. And if I don't, I'll ask questions until I can get to the real answers. Sometimes I'm brought in because an executive committee at a venture capital company won't know whether or not to invest in a particular company, and they won't know what questions to ask to find out how real the business plan is, because the numbers all make sense, but they don't know whether it's technically feasible. I'll come in and I'll ask the right kinds of questions because I'm good at that. Now, what also happens is I'll end up in these places for a week or a few days, even if I only have to be there for 1 or 2 meetings. I don't like to sleep alone, so I'll try and have someone who might fly in from a nearby country or a nearby state, or drive in from a nearby city, or I'll go out and make new friends. And what usually happens is very well respected, clever, established guys, often just finished a long and unpleasant marriage to the woman who was first runner-up in their selection of brides. It's a wonderful paradigm, guys. Think about this one for a second. Most men I've known ended up married to the woman who seemed right after they found out that the girl they should have married someone else. They didn't make the move at the right time with that girl. They seemed carrying a torch for her for years. She moved on because they weren't ready to commit at the time. Now she's off the market. They go, shit, I shouldn't have let that go. So the next girl that shows up on the scene, or the girl they're with at the time, who wasn't so great that they pushed that girl out of their mind, suddenly becomes Miss Right by default. And then they become Mrs. Whomever they are. And they go through a relationship that's never that great. May have some good parts, maybe not. And when it collapses, the guy's been out of the dating scene for a very long time, has not had a lot of guy friends whom he could complain about his problems in his relationship, or else his buddies would go things like that, because that's the way men are. So the man's desperate quest for approval, he wasn't prepared to leave. He'd say, well, I had to stay together for the sake of the kids. But as everyone who knows anything about kids will know, the best thing you can give kids is a happy home. And the next best thing you can give them is freedom from an unhappy home. So if you're miserable in your relationship, exit the relationship. Better for the kids, better for your former spouse, and better for you. She will go on to find someone better for her, almost certainly, because you weren't good for her if you weren't happy. And you will go off and find someone better for you. The tragic part is that most men won't leave unless they find something better. Mm-hmm. Men don't leave their wives because they're miserable. They leave their wives because they found someone better. And they need this so they can have the approval of other men who realize, oh, well, he left his wife, but look at the beautiful girl he hooked up with. But what more often happens is the wife, who's been putting up with it for years, complaining and complaining and complaining to all her friends until none of her friends are prepared to listen to her bitch about the same thing anymore. And she's found new friends so she can complain to them, and they all have gotten sick of listening to her bitch about the same thing. She finally packs up and moves on. And the guy goes, oh my God, I'm all alone. And everyone's looking down on me because I just got ditched. Oh well, at least I've got money and a job and stuff. Well, all I have to do now is become impressive. Then I'll have my choice of all these hot babes. Only impressive doesn't play out, guys. Impressive doesn't last. This week, if you can lift 350 pounds, you go out and you, hey guys, check this out. Lift 350 pounds. Everyone goes, woo, and some girl goes, wow, you lift 350 pounds. So she goes home with you. And 2 weeks later, the things about you that aren't nearly as impressive as that are much more obvious. And you go, shit, she's not impressed with me anymore. I'll go back to the gym and I'll teach myself to lift 400 pounds. And so you do, and you kick ass, and you get to the point, wow, everyone goes, wow, you can lift 400 pounds, that's amazing. The girl goes, yeah, wow, 400 pounds, that's really cool. 3 days later, she's bored with that. Because it's really not that big a deal. And you know, you can't go back, teach yourself to lift 450 pounds, because even if you can lift it, who cares? not that impressive. So the trick, guys, is stop worrying about being impressive. Be interesting. Interesting plays out. Okay? And the best way you can be interesting is by taking the time to learn things from the people you talk to, including the girls. And when they talk to you about things you find tedious as hell, transcend that. So you know what? I'm not the least bit interested in what kind of stitch they used on this particular outfit. I'm not the least bit interested in Karl Lagerfeld's relationship to the whoever family or whatever. But you know what? If the girl's interested in talking about it, you take the time to learn a little bit from her as you listen to her, and as things make sense for you. As you're learning, you'll become so attractive to her you won't believe it. Because just paying attention to a woman is a huge compliment, something she's not used to. Even really bright women aren't used to having guys pay attention to them. I've known some particularly bright women with big boobs who couldn't believe that when I talked to them, I was looking at their eyes. Now, it took some effort. But the good news is, what they had to say was worth listening to. And I would go home on my own, and there was wonderful internet. I could look things up. So that the next...
Girls with big boobs even have eyes.
Oh, most of them don't, I think. It's gravity. It happens just this way. Girls with huge boobs end up with guys who aren't tit men. Because the guys who aren't tit men look at them in the face. And so, what you need to figure out for yourselves is, stop trying. Could I get you to do me a favor and move 4 or 5 inches over to one side or the other? Because the fellow right behind you is having terrible trouble. Every time you tilt your head, he tilts his head, and I'm feeling dreadfully. I'm limited in how much I can move without moving off camera, so thank you. Once you acknowledge for yourself that you can make your own choices on how to do things, and you become confident in yourself that your decisions are wise and reasonable, then you can just be yourself. And I'm going to come back to that at length the next tape, because that's all I'm going to talk about for a little while. Something I call reasoned confidence. Okay? We're going to discuss that at length, and it's going to be something that I hope everyone here is going to walk away from going, I can't believe I didn't live this way my whole life. No, we're not. But before that, how are we doing on minutes?
Got 20 minutes.
Great. Well, I'd like to continue talking a little bit about girls. Because believe me when I tell you that reasoned confidence is the most powerful thing you can have, because it will allow you to be unbelievably attractive, not just to women, but to everyone around you, because you look like you know what you're doing, you believe in what you're doing, and you hold your frame. Very, very important. Now, so here we have this situation. In the seductive reasoning paradigm, which we were discussing before, the idea that people have bought into, men and women have bought into this role set for women, under which we have bought into the idea that in order for a girl to be good enough, she must have low mileage. She can't have been seen by many people as having a lot of lovers. Because if she's being seen as having been a tramp or a slut, our buddies are not going to be able to respect us for hooking up with them. And for some reason, this craving for approval, this necessity that men have for approval, is going to hold us back. It's going to hold us down. It's going to keep us from pursuing genuine happiness. By the same token, women's craving for security has come along with a burden. The burden is women can only have security in the form of their owner. A woman only has sufficient security if the man who buys her is of high enough status that she can rely on him to take care of her, solve her problems, balance her checkbook, pay her rent, whatever. And it doesn't matter whose money it is. Every guy here has probably been out with a girl at one point. Some of you guys are a little younger. most of you will have been on a date with a girl who handed you the keys to her car rather than drive you. Because women do this. They want to be led. They want to put things in the hands of the men, and they want the men to take them where they want to go. And by the way, guys, very, very important rule for you all to consider is it is human nature for women to wish to be led by men. If a woman gives you the opportunity to lead, take it. Demonstrate that you can lead, and she'll see you as the man. She'll count on you to lead her to the places she wants to go, so be pretty aware. Think about the kind of person she is and learn from her. But if you aren't prepared to lead, they won't have any time for you. Most women I know, if they're out with a guy and they talk for a while, they meet a guy, he doesn't ask them for their number but gives them his number, they'll never call. Because the fact that he didn't ask was a rejection to them. They'll see it as a guy who was putting the onus on them to chase him down, which meant either the guy had no balls, or he didn't think that they were compelling enough to be worth chasing down. Guy has to get the number from the girl and call the number of the girl in order for the girl to believe that the guy is interested in leading. There are aspects to this that are completely bass-ackwards. I was talking with a lovely girlfriend of ours this evening about the nature of her big problem with relationships, which was the same as so many other people. She would see guys she wanted. She'd be convinced she'd communicated like crazy, dropping all these subtle indicators. But he didn't pick up on them at all. I said, did you say, hey, you know what? There's something about you I really like. Here's my number. Call me up. We'll go out. She said, of course not. I said, did you say, give me your number. I'd like to call you up sometime when I'm horny. She just laughed. I said, you're missing the point. Try that. Guess what? You'll get laid. Problem is that most guys will be so intimidated by a girl who is clearly bad news because she knows what she wants. She's going after it. Doesn't that she know? That means she's got no self-respect. So you fellas in this room, need to take this idea with you. You need to percolate on it. You need to come to comfort with it. Until in your brains, you cannot believe that anyone in the world would look at a woman who's had a lot of sex for her own reasons as being bad or nasty or dirty. Guess what? The girls that are the most likely to give you an STD are the girls in long-term committed relationships with some other guy that you run into at that high point in their ovulation during their cycle, where for whatever reason, because you guys are the man, you say the right things, you make the right connections, she sneaks off into her closet at the IGA for a quickie. Because she's married or in a long-term relationship, she's probably on the pill. She definitely isn't carrying condoms. Maybe you aren't either. That's where STDs get transferred from most often amongst educated first worlders. Because girls who have routine recreational sex for their own reasons carry their own condoms, whether they're on the pill or not. They're aware. They know the risk is much, much greater to them. There isn't any person in this room who exclusively engages in heterosexual sex with women. That may have been tautological. There isn't anyone in this room who has sex with women unless they have a big occasional or permanent open sore on their tallywhacker who's likely to catch HIV even if they're having sex with a woman who's got full-blown AIDS. Because the statistical likelihood against it is outrageously high. However, for women, it doesn't take much at all. Women have to be educated well on why to cover themselves up. But for some reason, when a girl's good to go, none of that matters. And the less sexually playful, adventuresome, and experienced she is, the less it's even going to occur to her. See, women have this special way of equivocating in themselves. I know that Violet carries condoms. I wouldn't let her out of the house without them.
How many did you need?
We'll talk. Anyway, lately I've switched from the older size. I used to use the Trojan horse condoms to Trojan liar's size, which is extra horse. Anyway, the essence of what I'm trying to get across is, guys, it's the women you think of as the least likely to be trouble who are going to be the ones that cause the trouble. These are the girls who say to you, because in their minds they have this special logical process. Wow, Gary broke out the condom the first time we went to bed, put it on without my asking. Therefore, Gary always uses condoms. Therefore, Gary must not have any STDs. Therefore, this second time we're having sex, in the same night, we don't need to use a condom. Anyone here know what I'm talking about from first-hand experience? Well, let me tell you the number of times, guys, that I've been with women who have said to me when I cracked out a condom, they said, oh, thank God you broke one out. Do you always use them? I say, of course. I said, okay, good, because I hate those things. I trust you. Wow, let me remind you, the reason that I can trust me is 'cause I can put this thing on now. There are a lot of people out there who do trust me, whom I can know that they can trust me, because I don't make stupid calls like that.
Thank you.
Truth of the matter is, the more sexually experienced a girl is, the less likely she is to make stupid calls. The less likely she is to find herself in that place in her horniness within the course of the month where she hasn't thought it through and realized, you know what? I'm dressing really hot today for some reason. I'm wearing really low-cut outfits. I know I'm just going to find somebody and have sex with them. Like, I got a bunch of safes on my bag before I go. Because girls get used to the things that work. And they're smart about it. It's the girls who fight. No, I can't. Well, maybe just a little. No, I can't. Oh, okay. These are the ones who are going to have sex with you whether you've got a condom or not. They're going to have sex with you whether your car smells bad. They're going to have sex with you whether your place is a filthy sty, your cat litter's overflowing, your mattress is on the floor, you have a comforter and no sheet. They're going to go to bed with you. Practically nothing will stop them. Certainly not the lack of a condom. They'll just say, pull out. Okay? Guys, I want you all to promise me. You don't have to say it out loud. In your own minds. You're not going to be stupid about this. Okay? Remember, when you get a girl who says things like that, you're not the only one she said it to. So, don't catch anything, and don't spread anything.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, so, presuming that we're all smart guys and we're all going to be very mature about the way we go about making our decisions. And we're going to meet these girls, whomever they are, and we're not going to think as we meet some girl who's sitting there quietly pretending she's had 6 lovers, and we're thinking, well, you know, if we multiply it by 3, we get 18. Say to the girl, I've heard that it's usually appropriate to multiply it by. How close is that in your case? And the girl will go, oh. Look, honey, sex involves a lot of muscles. I'm hoping that your muscles are well trained from a lot of experience. I say to people all the time, if you learn how to play chess from your dad, when you're 15 or 16 or 17, you go out to play your first game against someone else because you've gotten to the point where you could consistently beat your old man at chess, and you walk out the door all feeling good about yourself and get destroyed by the first person you play. Okay? There's a reason when you're going through martial arts belts, becoming more skilled, you're learning variations on the previous things, you're learning how to do things that require a little more extension and things like this, until you become good at a lot of different stuff. Even though, in fact, if they wanted to, they could just teach you how to throw one pretty good punch, and most of the time that'd help. The reason is because, guys, everyone's different. Things that are going to work for one person are not going to work for the next person. I can tell you with my lifetime experience. You can't use the same techniques on girl after girl. You can't even use the same techniques on the same girl 3 or 4 days in a row. It just doesn't play out.
Or same day even.
Yes. As a matter of fact, there are things, some girls who, if you touch their nipples, well, it's too much, too much. And by the time they're 20 minutes into intercourse, you could be trying to chew their nipples off their body and they wouldn't be having enough of it. They'd want you to go further. Because things change inside a person's body. Your body generates different chemistry as you go. And the thing that changes in the way that your brain is working, your brain doesn't report to. By the way, we've changed the color of the lenses on your glasses so that you've got a yellow tint to everything now. Because if you woke up tomorrow and someone changed your contact lenses so everything was yellow, your brain would adjust for it. And the next day you changed so everything was blue tint, your brain would adjust for it. And you'd go and you'd try and draw things out the way you thought they were supposed to look. And the next day they'd all look wrong, and the next day they'd all look wrong again. Because the eyes you're looking through are the same, but the filters have changed for reasons you have no idea. And in fact, they don't need to touch your contact. It's entirely chemical. It takes place in your brain. Any of you people hypoglycemic? Well, you got a healthy crowd. That's where you have low blood sugar and you suddenly get cranky and bitchy and hard to be around. I'm like that. Well, it's like that. So we're pretty conscientious not to let ourselves get too far down the line. Now, because I'm very ADD and easily distracted, Violet will drag me away from things to go eat if she knows that my ability to reason is declining very quickly. But my ability to recognize it is declining even more quickly. And this is the way things go. So you have to remember, because hopefully you've got enough blood in your head to manage at least, or in your body to manage at least one head. Try and make sure that while it's in the upper one, you're making reasonable choices. But recognize, for whatever reason, the hormones in women are much more compelling to them. See, if men charged women with rape for every time a girl got horny and was not about to take no as an answer, almost every girl I've ever known would be in jail. Because when women are horny and good to go, they won't take no for an answer. If they have to, they'll become unbearable. Because they don't take no well at all. Okay? A woman scorned is not a woman who's been cast aside. It's a woman who's had the word no put in front of her. And it's pretty serious. Now, you gotta think these things through. You've got to be careful. And you have to recognize that there is no battle, you're on the same side. How do you work with this? How many minutes do we have?
5.
5 minutes. Okay, guys, I'm going to give you a little extra gold that I hadn't planned to talk to you about. One of the things that people keep contacting me about from my initial seminar, they ask me about it all the time. Guys who are really paying attention, they say, Johnny, you spoke about something in your seminar that really hit home for me, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. You said, be disarming. See, you walk up to a military base and you've got a crap load of artillery with you and tanks and things. You're still going to have a battle getting through, but you might be able to. If you walk up to that military base with a big smile and you let them know you're on their side and they believe you, they'll just open their door. Much easier. There is no battle of the sexes, gentlemen. Women want what we want. They want to have sex and still feel good about themselves. They want to enjoy the act without feelings of guilt. You can do this for them in 2 ways. You can empower them to find a way to make you not count, or you can empower them to emancipate themselves, free themselves from the thousands of years of bad programming. I always recommend, during the course of conversation, that you share this seductive reasoning paradigm. It's a killer, because it's clear and true and real and defensible. And as it sits in their head and resonates, it might not be the first time you talk to them about it, that they go, all my life I've been turning away things I wanted because I thought that's what I'm supposed to do. But, oh my God, I've bought into this myth that a woman who runs her own life is a bad person because culture has explained it to me that way. Now, I'm not going to go full details on that. Watch the Seductive Reasoning video introductions again. Second tape in particular goes through the entire model in much greater detail. Go through the first and second tapes if you have a chance, if you haven't lately, until this really makes sense, and you can build out the entire model, both the evolutionary psychology basis behind it, which is demonstrable and defensible, and you can look it up and find all the justifications, and the description I've explained, in which you get women to tell you that the woman who does what she wants is called a slut. The woman who does things because she's paid is called a whore. That these whores come in two varieties: the disreputable kind, the hoe, and the highly reputable kind, the wife. And by the time you get her to give you those names, slut and wife, and slut and whore, she's yours. I don't mean she's necessarily going to go to bed with you. I mean she's bought into the concept well enough, you don't have a battle anymore. As you help her to recognize that she can make her own choices up, and because you fully understand this and your frame is so clear that you completely get this, you'll stop being a man in the camp of men while she's a woman in the camp of women. You'll be like a double agent. You'll have sneaked over across enemy lines, and now you're a person that she can have recreational sex with without feeling guilty about it. Do you understand? You'll have disarmed her by saying, "Psst, I'm a conscientious objector to the battle of the sexes. There is no war. Come on out, I'll explain it to you. You see? Now let's get busy." Another hour. How are we doing for time?
Okay, we got a couple more minutes.
Oh, I love it when these tapes get long.
Yeah, on the subject of disarming, how would you deal with disarming a man? Like
Well,
if they were angry about you being with their girlfriend.
Okay, well, let's just see. That's a very important thing. Let's actually talk about that. If you have to recognize something, there's jealousy, which to me is a demonstration of a person's lack of self-confidence. Okay? A person's jealous if he believes that exposing his beloved or whichever to choice will end him up coming up short, and he'll lose that thing that he wants. Okay? Leave jealousy alone for the moment, because that's a sign of a simple-minded person who's got issues. You can work with that, work with him on that, but you're not going to solve it right away. The second thing is the concept of territoriality. See, Violet, who is the greatest love I've ever known, understands that in my world I have two rules for all the women I'm involved with. One, I won't be any woman's only male lover. And two, every woman I'm involved with must commit to doing her best to getting along with my other female friends. Now that means any of you might be able to sleep with Violet, it's up to her and you. But because you know me, I'd expect enough respect to know, I'd like in your minds to think, if you're going to hit on my lady, and you know she's my lady, come up to me first and say, I think Violet's great, do you mind if I say, knock yourself out? And I'll wish you luck, and I hope you do her justice when you go to bed with her.
If.
But what I'm saying that's so important is it's territoriality. And humans are territorial. So if you've broken that respect by overstepping someone's territory, then you got a bit of a problem. You have to go through the opposite way. Okay, let's cut this, and we'll start again in a minute. Does anyone need a bio break?
Could you please medicate me against my Tourette's?
I meant to stick something in your mouth to quiet you down. Are you having fun yet?